When you came in, what was the revenue of the company?
The revenue, $400 million.
And what was it at 18 years later?
$15 billion.
I know you don't like the word turnaround, but you really like hockey stick their business up. You go in to see Don, and he gives you a card with one line basically letting you know, like, thank you so much, here's the door. I guess what I want to know is, how did that feel?
How did it feel? Well, it was, what the fuck?
Today on The Messy Parts, we're going to have on Mickey Drexler. He was the CEO of The Gap in the 80s, then went on to turn around J.Crew, and today he runs Alex Mill. The reason I love that Mickey Drexler came on is because when I was in college, he had a campaign running for The Gap called Individuals of Style. It was an iconic campaign, so iconic that Richard Dixon and his team have brought it back today at The Gap. And I had this idea of combining a travel guide that I did, which was an insider guide to cities, with his campaign. I mock it up, I mail it to him because this is pre-internet, and it's the finals in my business school class, and the phone rings, and it's Mickey Drexler. This led to me meeting Mickey Drexler, and in fact, I often say Mickey Drexler started me on my career in marketing because I wasn't looking for a job at The Gap. I just wanted them to do the guide. And he said to me, this is a marketing idea. You should go into marketing. He is a man who is all about creativity and instinct, which makes a lot of sense when you think about the fact that him and Steve Jobs, they were so tight, they actually convinced each other to be on each other's board. This is a conversation that is all kinds of things, but you're going to want to listen. And partly I want you to know that Charlie, he really did think Mickey was a dog whisperer, so he was very active. And I think he had the spilkas, which is a word that Mickey talks about. I can't wait for you to hear it. I can't tell you, Mickey, how excited I am to have you here in the house on the blue couch. You and I have a funny backstory, which is that you were CEO of The Gap, the Individuals of Style campaign, which is kind of back, however many years later. I created a mock-up of that ad campaign and mailed it to you, and it was the middle of the finals, and the phone rang, and you called.
It's what I do.
Which I now know is totally what you do. And we ended up...
Because you never know when you make the call.
That would have been in 1991, and you never know because here you are on my couch many years later. And while I never
worked for you...
Sounds like
you're a psychiatrist. Here I am on your couch, but...
Which I know your wife, Peggy's a psychiatrist. It's just a whole full circle moment here.
All right. Well, now she's a documentary maker.
Okay. All right. Well, so we've already covered a lot of ground in this, this conversation. But I remember so distinctly that phone call because it was really, I say before the internet, I'd mailed you a book. And you called, and I have often said in interviews that exchange, and you're introducing me to Susan Cooper, who was head of recruiting for you, really started me on my career because you both said to me, this is a marketing idea, you should go into marketing. And so here we are. Now I'm a podcaster, so who knows? I obviously know about your incredibly iconic career, but what I want to talk about a little bit is sort of how you started, right? You grew up in the Bronx. I read that you lost your mom when you were 16. I lost my father when I was 17, which you may not know. And, you had a complicated relationship with your dad.
That's a nice way to put it.
Well, how would you put it?
He didn't fit the job description of a dad. And he wasn't that nice to my mom, or he wasn't nice to me. And I kind of give him credit for my success today to a degree. But, he wanted to be successful. He acted like a big shot. We lived in a ground floor apartment in the Bronx. I slept in the foyer area, the entry area. And he worked in the garment business. He always acted like, he had a lot of bills and all that, but wherever that came from. But he worked in the shipping room. And he was just not a nice person. The only thing he did good for me was force me to work as a kid. I used to work in the shipping room where he worked at a junior coat manufacturer in the garment business. So I had a work ethic. And my mom was very depressed. She had lived with cancer for many years.
So you think that sort of that complicated upbringing was part of your drive?
1,000,000%, not even 100%. I like people who have had adversity. I skewed towards them in who I like meeting because today It's a different environment, a different generation, because I had to do certain things. I went to public schools. I went to Bronx Science, which made a difference in my life. I went to City College, and then I kind of got out of town. College, grades, board scores, I couldn't care less. I like a college degree, but on the other hand, there's a lot of successful people who haven't had them. I grew up kind of being anti-fancy people. Even today, I am kind of that way.
Although now you might be a fancy person.
Well, it's interesting. People respond to me like that, and but I respond to them. I call them back, and that's the same old me, because I never had anyone who mentored me. I didn't have role models. 8 cousins. I'm the only one who went to college, Jewish, in the 60s. Pretty amazing, because the educational ethic wasn't there.
So you didn't go to business school, and
I did.
Did you go to business school?
To stay out of the draft.
Oh, I didn't find that.
That was my mission.
Okay, but did you think business school helped you?
No, it's a waste of time.
Do you still think that?
Yeah.
Because all these kids who are graduating and we're not quite sure what the job market's going to look like.
You have an MBA.
I do.
Yeah, I know. Well,
That's when I met you.
Did it help you?
It did. Well, first of all, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have known you came to speak at Columbia, and I wouldn't have met you. So maybe. So it's interesting. You have 2 children.
Yes.
And I assume they did not have the kind of adversity you had growing up.
No.
Do you worry about them? Because I think about that. I also had adversity growing up, and I worry about how you pass that resilience on, because I think that dysfunction is part of my journey and success, possibly.
I think no one escapes from whatever it is. People can say this, that. My son grew up, and he works with me now, which is not easy for him. I had a good trainer in my dad to not ever be like him. In fact, I say that about people I work for. I mostly learn from people I really don't find that. I never had a boss I really admired in my first 12 years. I think my kids, they have their issues, but who doesn't?
Who doesn't?
But they're nice kids. They're nice. Well, Alex is 47. Catherine's in her mid-30s. But they're nice, and they have good values.
Okay, so you do 12 years. You're definitely known for paying attention to lots of details, including obviously picking up the phone and calling everybody.
It's very important, because I never want to be the big shot, because I didn't get a lot of calls back. I didn't get the big shots when I went up the escalator in Bloomingdale's. Hi. I said to myself, well, I work for you. Hello. They didn't say hi. But I don't want to be that person. And in my opinion today, most of those people are that person.
Who's most of those people? CEOs?
CEOs, chairmen, bureaucrats. But I didn't want to be like them, because my best compliment is 2 Yiddish words.
Which are?
Hamisha and a mensch.
Oh, I know what mensch is.
Yeah,
I don't know what hamisha is.
Down to earth. If you look it up, you'll see what the exact definition is.
Okay. So that was clearly always part of your personality. You get to the Gap, and it's a big turnaround.
Well, I'll tell you, my personality, I was painfully shy.
What?
Yes.
When?
As a kid growing up, I was always shy into my 20s, actually, probably in my 30s. I was always reticent, but I worked a lot hard. I worked hard. And I guess I worked very smart at Bloomingdale's, but I didn't come out of my shell. I was older.
So were you at the Gap at this point?
I was at the Gap. I was at Ann Taylor when I was 35, became the CEO. I turned down the job twice, CEO of Ann Taylor. I was 35, worked in a department store job, which I hated. And I always...
Wait, why did you hate that job?
Bureaucratic, and I was looking for someone I admired.
To work for?
Yeah, and I had this sense, and, I admired at Bloomingdale's, my first boss 2 levels up. I really liked him a lot, but I liked him because he liked me, and we had a nice relationship. But in terms of the business, No, I never had someone I really liked.
You take the job at the Gap.
No, first Ann Taylor.
Ann Taylor.
I was having dinner at home with someone who was much older and more successful. You have friends when you're young, like they're big shots sometimes. He was a big shot. I told him what was going on. I said, well, I was offered the head of Ann Taylor job, and I said, I've turned it down twice. He said that night, take the job, better off being the CEO of a $25 million company than the vice president of a $500 million company. And the next morning, I was so nervous, I called the president of the corporation, Manny, and I said, is the job still open? He said, yes. And I said, I'll take it. Changed my life.
So he was right. Your friend was right about that.
Yeah, I don't talk to him anymore, but it did change my life.
But he gave you good advice.
That was it. The advice was that. It was like, it made sense. When you're a young person, you don't think what you think is necessarily right. I worked at A&S on a summer MBA job. I did great, so I thought. I fell in love with the job and the environment. And so when they came to offer me a job out of graduate school, they offered me $11,000, and I was going to take it, of course, and whatever. And a guy I knew in the class, I wasn't even friendly with him, said, can you fix me up with A&S? I said, sure. I called the head of HR. He interviews. And when I ran into him later, he says, oh, I got the job, thank you. They're paying me $11,500. I was fucking furious. There was something there that I didn't like.
What was it?
What makes him better than me? I worked there for 3 months. I did a great job. I was well liked. And they give him $500 more. It was a signal to me, a tell. I interviewed at Bloomingdale's. I really had good interviews. I liked the vibe of the company. They were pretty desirable then. And so I took the job there. And then I was very lucky because the first day I was in housewares, whatever. I didn't know what a pot and a pan was. And the second day they put me into a junior sportswear shop as the buyer because Barbara, the buyer, was on maternity leave. And I ran it. I did that for 6 months. I loved it. I was on my own completely.
So you go to the Gap to do a turnaround.
Well, I don't call anything a turnaround.
Really?
Yeah, I don't.
Because you did a turnaround at J.Crew.
No, I don't use the word turnaround ever.
Why not?
I'll tell you why. I think it's a short-term word. People say I turn companies around. I don't. I marry a company, and it's always long-term. Mm-hmm. Now, at Ann Taylor, we were taken over by Allied stores. Anytime a big corporate company takes over a creative company, they strip it of all cultural ways, and they don't understand creativity. I'm allergic to big corporations.
You were the CEO of a big corporation.
Different, and that's why I did well, because I never forgot or forget who I was. But I was in the stores every week, because who do you learn from more than a salesperson who's dealing with a customer? God forbid, at Bloomingdale's, Macy's, A&S, someone would walk on the floor to talk to the associates who work there. Anyway, I was 18 years at Gap, started Old Navy, and they owned Banana Republic. I think I was fired with 1 day notice.
I remember,
right,
because we lost touch, and I called you after that news because I remembered that you'd been seminal to me, and I feel like moments when bad things happen, those are sort of the moments you reach out. But by the way, I also remember that Steve Jobs gave you the heads up because you were on his board and he was on the Gap board.
And they wouldn't tell him until they legally had to tell
because
him.
He got it and he sort of gave you the call, like, hey, heads up.
I came back from a board dinner. I'll never forget. We had a bad year. Who doesn't? Might have even been a recession. And I knew the turn was in. You could feel it.
I just want to say we all feel it before it comes.
Right. Exactly.
Right? It's the instinct. I've been there.
No,
we know.
No. The instinct and intuition is the most important traits I have. I see around corners. We had this young guy came in. I knew his father. He's had Uggs, worked with me. Can you speak to my son? So he sends me a list of 10 or 15 questions today. I spent about an hour with him, only because his dad, I know him. And the questions were, how do I get to be a merchant? How do I do that? I have them on the email if you want to see them. But what am I going to tell him? And I say this, there is something you're born with.
What were you born with?
Well, besides misery and anxiety.
Yes, well, those are things that, we can put to good use, apparently.
Right. I was born with a drive to be the opposite of my father. I didn't know that until in hindsight. He was bitter, he was angry, and he wasn't a nice person. And when I did the payroll once in the coat company, he'd act like a big shot all the time. I was 16, take the payroll to the bank. I said, wow. So I get down the freight elevator, I walk out into the next freight elevator, and I go through every pay stub.
So he found out how much he made.
And he was one of the lowest paid guys there. And it devastated me because he dressed very well always, and he acted like a big shot. We didn't live like big shots live. I'll never forget how depressed I was from that. But I think all good things come out of depression and whatever else.
What was the instinct that you think you were born with? Because you talk about that
Well,
a lot. Because
you know-
when we met, you were like, I don't believe in marketing
Yeah.
or
Well,
research. It's
you
just
wanna-
instinct.
This is a strange story. And I didn't realize it. When I was 10 years old, my father bought a new Buick Special 2-door, and he ordered it red with a white top. And then we went to pick up the car. I'll never forget this. I look at the car, and it's red with a cream top. I was so upset, and I hated that car because the top was the wrong color. I remember that as kind of a telling moment for me. I never thought about it as a kid, but you kind of look back in hindsight. What the heck?
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the story because
Go
we
ahead.
digress, which we're good at.
I digress a lot.
Well, that's what we do.
Tangents,
I think it's a sign of creativity. Or at least I'll go with that.
Yeah, right.
So you have an instinct. You sort of know things are not great on the business. So you're not completely surprised when Steve Jobs calls you to give you the heads up.
No, I wasn't surprised because I was looking for a new president of the Gap division. So they have me interview at my home in San Francisco on a Saturday, a woman who was the chief merchant at J.C. Penney. She came in, and for me, I really have a thing about I like them or I don't with people. Interviews, 5 minutes. In fact, I just know about people. Maybe because I spent my whole life either living in my fantasies or thinking about people or whatever. Then I get a call from a director. Now, this is the chief merchant at J.C. Penney.
Yeah, why is a director calling you about that?
He wanted to know what I thought of her. I knew something was up. They're looking for her to replace me. But
Wow.
that was a feeling.
Mm-hmm. Had you gotten the call from Steve already?
No, I got home at 9.
Yeah.
Steve he didn't go to the board meetings, never went anywhere with them. Anyway, I got the call at 9. He goes, you're getting fired tomorrow. Go call Don. I said, I said, no wonder they couldn't look at me. And I called him. He got nervous because they do lawyers come in and see me at 8 in the morning. He hands me one note. It says, effective today or tomorrow. Not a nice note, just a one sentence. This is your last day.
You were fired via sticky.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Via, what did you
A
call it?
sticky, a little sticky note.
Oh, no, was that? Yeah, sticky. I call them stick-ons.
Oh, a stick-on.
That's funny. And I'm looking at this, and then I said, I managed your assets for 18 years. What did I do wrong? Whatever. So
Did he have an answer?
No. He was, Don Fisher was not a warm, fuzzy man.
How long did that conversation last? 10 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. And you were out of the office?
No, I said I want to see the board. So I went in to see the board. None of them looked at me again, I guess. Maybe they thought I was contagious. I don't know. And he came back and says, well, we're going to let you stay till we hire your replacement.
You stayed from May through September?
September 26th.
Why'd you stay?
Well, I wanted to finish my job. I mean,
Can I just go back for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
You get this little card. You've been there 18 years. When you came in, what was the revenue of the company?
the revenue, $400 million,
And what was it at 18 years later?
$15 billion.
Okay. So
There was no Old Navy either, which is now, I think, $11 billion of this, still $15 billion.
I know you don't like the word turnaround, but you really like hockey stick their business up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did.
Yeah. Okay. So on the heels of that, bad year, you go in to see Don and he gives you a card with one line basically letting you know, like, thank you so much. Here's the door.
No, I didn't get a thank you.
No, thank you. Just
don't
gave you a
think so.
card.
You're right.
So I guess what I want to know is, how did that feel?
How did it feel? Well, it was, what the fuck?
Yeah, shitty.
Well, it felt like, holy shit.
Like a gut punch?
Don was not a warm, fuzzy guy. He's one guy. He gave you $1 million raise. You still tell him to go fuck himself. He wasn't gracious. He wasn't nice. And he was never really appreciative. He made billions of
Yes.
dollars. And so I was really pissed internally.
But you held it together, as we all do in
100
those moments. I just want to say.
So I was on Charlie Rose probably a year after that, when Charlie Rose still had a show or whatever. And he said, how did it feel getting fired like that? I said, you know how it felt? It's their opinion and they were wrong. Now I really feel that way about things. But politics in big companies, few people didn't like me. Why? Because I knew who they were and they knew I knew.
That's my least favorite part of corporate jobs.
Yep.
So definitely many years later, you still think about it.
You know what I think about? The mercenaries in this world. I think about private equity bankrupting J.Crew, bankrupting the company. I think about them not calling one member of the senior executive team when I left or when they hired a new CEO. That's what I remember about. I don't like big corporations unless there's a real person running them.
I interviewed Bobby Brown the other day.
I love Bobby.
And she loves you. Of course, you all know each other. And she was telling the story about basically being fired.
When she was fired, I was her counsel in a way, because I went through it 2 or 3 years before her. In fact, I read in her book, I just called her Sunday. I said, Bobby, your father was really handsome. And I said, also, the way they fired you was awful.
Is there a good way to fire someone?
Yes, I fired many people in my life.
What's the good way?
I sit down, it's not working out. I'm sorry. And I'm friendly with all of them except one guy.
Because sometimes somebody just outgrows a job.
A lot of times.
Yeah. You leave there, and then what makes you decide to go again with J.Crew?
I was furious at how I was treated.
Understandably.
And Don said he made a mistake. He said, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done what I did. I'm looking at this guy.
What?
And then he said, my family and I would like to back you in a new company.
Did you take him up on it?
Oh, yeah, right. I wanted him as a partner again, right? And it was bad for the company, bad for him, bad in the community.
You worked from May through September. How did you keep showing up there? Because people must have known.
I wanted to make sure that I fixed it, and I knew I was going to.
It was personal for you staying to show them.
I had an obligation. I didn't want to leave then.
They just fired you.
In fact, Don said to me once, he goes, I'm surprised you're working so hard.
Yeah, why are you working so hard?
Because that's what I do.
That's who you are. So you decide to go again. You go into J.Crew.
Well, I went in, I bought 10% of the company, and then I realized the inventory was that much worse. So they reimbursed me for, the bad inventory. 4 years later, we went public. I owned the name Madewell. And there's nightmare stories with them as my partners.
One of the things you did at J.Crew that you didn't do at Gap, you made Jenna Lyons a star.
Yep.
You actually, right? Like at the Gap, at Old Navy, at Banana, it was never about one person. In thinking about that, would you do that again?
I couldn't have done it without her early days. What I do when I get to the Gap, I interview the whole team very quickly. And it's kind of like Sophie's Choice in a way with me. Yes, no, no, yes. And I met Jenna. She's there 20 years. And I said, she's the one. Now,
Are you still good friends with her?
yeah. I mean, when I say good, those were bad days in a company. And she was a very critical part of the team to turn around the company, to use your word, and then to grow it. And we're still friends.
So also not a good ending at J.Crew.
The private equity groups and the venture groups, I had the same thing happen at Outdoor Voices. I was chairman, but that's a whole other story.
No, we're going to talk about Outdoor Voices.
Okay, good. So we're going to have a series here. By the way, before I got to Gap, I had a list of things. Actually, when I was at Abraham and Strauss, I just made a list of all the Gap items that I thought America needed at a fair price. Now, I always admired Ralph. Personally, I find him whatever, but because he always kind of accused me of copying him. But he was an inspiration because he nailed it, and he still does nail it. His clothes are nice, they're normal. He was always too expensive for me as a young person. I went to Ann Taylor. Well, I was in my early 30s, but I loved his clothes. I got it all wholesale because my college roommate's cousin was his secretary.
So the list is what you took to J.Crew?
Alex Mill. Mm-hmm. There's always a white space out there. And, if you don't take the shot, you can't score.
But Alex Mills was started by your son.
He started it 10 years ago,
right,
12
without
years
you,
ago.
Really. I mean, you weren't involved.
I had nothing to do with it.
And then you stepped in.
Well, when I left J.Crew, I sat in a venture capital office. That's how I got involved with, that was a nightmare, with Outdoor Voices.
Because Outdoor Voices was on fire. I remember my daughter being obsessed with their workout clothes.
Well, it was on fire, and the reason I invested in it, I became the chairman, and of course I had to be the CEO-ish, because Tyler Haney, she didn't like me from the get-go, because I was doing what a chairman and a CEO should do. She didn't let me do my job, and they didn't care. I hired some people. She fired them all. So
that sounds like a mess.
It was a mess. You can't fix bad people.
Okay, so let's go to Alex Mill, because here's your son. Like, and by the way, having the antithesis of your growing up experience on purpose.
Yeah.
He starts the company. What do you think it is that people don't understand about Alex Mill?
Well, now they understand it better.
But what is it? What is it they didn't get before?
First of all, when you have a couple of stores, tiny, we weren't known at all. When I took over the big companies, they had a critical mass of people, lots of stores, and they were famous. And Alex Mill was a total unknown. And now we're in the middle of this. I mean, I'm so...
And what's causing that?
5 years of pain and all that. But
a startup, much harder than turning around, or however you want to call it.
What causes it is I didn't have the bank of Gap or J.Crew, and I was funding it. I thought people would call and want to invest also. No one called. We're too small. We don't make any money, they said. They had no interest. But what happened is the goods got better and better and better.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. If you were starting out today, what advice would you have for somebody who's graduating from college? You've lived a rich life through a lot of journeys here.
Yeah. Well, I tell them, hire your boss. I'd say you're going to make mistakes. Take a shot. If you instinct, it's funny. I went to J.C. Penney to interview a million years ago when I was finished with school. The HR guy touring us, it was in New York then. So the guy says to the group of, it must have been 20 of us, we passed the first interview, whatever. He said, if you don't feel right about a place or it's not your kind of thing, you shouldn't be working there. I walked right out.
So trust your instinct.
Trust your judgment. Pick the brains of people who know more than you do. Now, speak to people who might in fact give you good advice. I spend every day speaking to strangers and like friends of people I know, the sons of this.
You're always taking input.
I always. Well, I take every meeting.
Yeah.
And I always learn something. You never know. But, I learn from every meeting because, I'm a detective. I like DNA.
You were always curious.
Always.
Always curious. Okay, we're going to try rapid fire. This is
Okay.
going to be a test for you. I just want to say, because rapid fire may not be your thing. So, okay. What's a mistake that taught you more than a win?
Oh, it's a series of mistakes.
You only get one.
Be careful who you partner with.
Okay, like that one. Is there a habit or mindset you wish you'd adopted earlier?
I'm pleased with where I am today. So just not trusting as much as I trusted.
If you think about the messiest moments in your career, and I love how many you've had, by the way, for you to be incredibly successful and have had those many messes is amazing. What's the messiest moment on a scale of 1 to 10 that you've had?
The messiest was, the shock was being fired with no notice. To be fired the way I was fired was the messiest, and bad taste and bad style.
Is that a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh yeah, you don't do that.
Last time you cried?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fair. One career myth that you think is a waste of time?
Fancy degrees, fancy colleges.
Advice you'd give to
And
someone...
an MBA.
Advice you'd give to someone who's having a confidence crisis?
Well, I have to know if I had confidence in them before I could give them advice.
If you were getting a performance review today, what advice would you give to someone as they head in to get that performance review?
Well, I would say try not to be afraid to say what you think.
You mentioned you use ChatGPT and you're all about instinct.
I
You
just
always have
started
been.
Chat.
Okay.
Just started.
You
it.
just started. Do you think that AI will kill instinct?
Well, I've had a big argument on that. I think it will definitely.
What's the one thing you learned from Steve Jobs that surprised you?
What I learned is no fear. He just didn't let anything stop him. I learned he was seductive. He's a great salesperson and a genius. And he was the smartest guy in the room. And we once had him over for a week, and my wife's pretty familiar with books and movies. He just intimidated the hell out of both of us. And it wasn't like he was bragging. He just knew every movie, every song, the books. Stunning. Very special human being.
What do you think of what's happening in the Gap today?
You think I can answer that?
Yes, I do. You're free.
No, I could tell you, but not publicly.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you one final
And the
public
same
question.
with
Then you can
J.Crew.
tell me.
The same with J.Crew. I cannot answer that.
No, off the record, we'll have that conversation. You've made it to the end of the episode with Mickey Drexler. Mickey Drexler is an icon of the retail business. Anyone who's in retailing knows him because his impact has been outsized. But what I love about his story isn't just about his career. It's about the fact that he relies on his instinct and takes every meeting. Now, that is a lesson I think we can all take home. You never know what waits for you if you just take the meeting. Now, remember, if you enjoyed this episode, please like it, share it, and subscribe. And you can get us on all platforms, from YouTube to Apple to Spotify or anywhere else. And remember, you can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok.